Thank you, Mohammed. We have time for a couple questions.
Professor, what do you think of Raman technology in terms of allowing silicon delays?
In silicon domain?
Yeah.
The question is, what do I think about Raman technology in silicon domain? Again, not to make this too technical, but you still have a pump light source. And so if you have to have a laser anyway, what advantage does the silicon bring you? That's the fundamental question. More generally, what the question that's being asked is there a place for optics on a chip? And the answer on that depends if you can if you still have to have an external laser, you haven't really won anything. But if you can actually figure out how to do that all electrically driven on a chip, there can be a value.
I have one important question. Just so I understand the analogy with the movie, what's the ball?
The question is, what's the ball? I mean, the ball is the playing field, it's the technology of what you have. The tool set you have is your driving putt. And so, the ball is the thing that's going to move forward. It's the technology. And putting is really the execution. How are you going to hit that? How are you going to get it to the red flag? One of the things, maybe I'll just carry on from the ball analogy, is I like that movie because not only does it talk about focus that you have to have as an entrepreneur, it also says that you have to be able to see, even though it's 445 yards or whatever, you need to be able to see the whole thing. And you need to get that ball all the way to the red flag, basically. And so that ball basically depends on each and every one of you. You have a different technology, for example. Yes, Dave.
So if you were king, what would you do to increase the yield of knowledge-based activity in Michigan, given who we are, and what we've been?
There was a big if at the beginning of that. If I were king, did you say? If I were king, what would I do? This is, of course, the conundrum that this man has to deal with. How do we get entrepreneurship off the ground? We have to, in my opinion, we have to look at the various stakeholders that we have in the game. We have the faculty, we have the students, and we also have the funding, whether it be from the state or federal government and whatnot. So all of these may have a different aspect to it. For the faculty, I think we have to make it more acceptable and easier to do. Lower some of those barriers. And I don't mean to say by that the university just should roll over and play dead, but rather, look, we haven't done this well. So let's lower the barriers, let's get a couple of home runs, and then if we're successful, we can raise the bar, and if we have no success, we abandon this experiment. But let's take a chance on it. For the students, we've got a lot of very enthusiastic, energetic, at least in the college engineering, they're worried about what's the future because they read in the newspaper every day that the jobs are going to Asia. There's no manufacturing base in the United States. They're disheartened. And, United States has always been best at innovation. We have to teach them, ultimately we can't teach them passion because that's what it takes to do a startup. But what we can do is we can teach them how to put one foot in front of the other, give them some models that they can follow so they can execute and create their company. They have to come with the passion. We give them the tool set and the know-how how to go. Remind you that teaching entrepreneurship is exactly the same as teaching our scientific and engineering disciplines because what we do is we take a whole bunch of facts and experiments that we know about, but in order to teach our students, what we do is we generalize it to a model. We say, every case is different, but there are still some things that are common. And so then what we teach in our scientific and engineering courses are sort of that methodology, that commonness that they can then apply to different problems. It's the same thing in entrepreneurship. We need to teach them the basics of how to do the startups, how to be entrepreneurial, but not the specifics of, they're going to work on software, they're going to work on optics, whatever. And then for the state and whatnot, I think we need to make sure that we, again, not only that we encourage it, whether it be through tax incentives or entrepreneurial funds like the 21st Century or something, but also that the state not say that this isn't part of the mission. The state has to say this is part of the mission. The parents who are sending children to be educated here have to say this is part of our mission. This is one of the things we have to do. Anyway, that's a long-winded answer to your question.
One last question.
For the students still in undergrad, do you recommend the PhD track is the most effective way?
I don't know where the question's coming from. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry about that. For the students still in undergrad, do you recommend the PhD track as the most effective way of finding the technological niche?
Do I recommend what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
PhD track is finding the technological niche that you need for a startup.
Let me just make sure I repeat the question, because this is one of those test of loyalties kind of thing. I think the question you're asking, do I do anything valuable in life here? Which is to say, should a student go on for a PhD? Is that a correct statement?
Well, as far as doing PhD for a startup, should the student consider the PhD as an effective means of finding the technological niche to do a startup?
If I understand the question correctly, you're asking, by doing a PhD, is it more likely to find that technology niche?
Yes.
I guess the honest answer, I think, is no. But let me explain what I mean by that. After all, I teach PhD students, so I have to answer this question. The reason to do a PhD is that you understand a methodology of research and technology. And often, even though every person's motivation for going for a PhD is different, somewhere in the back of your mind is the PhD is part of your own self-esteem, how you value yourself. For all the students that I look at that are successful, it's part of their psyche that they feel this is important to them. That's the reason to do a PhD. How do you walk into a startup? I guess the easiest way, if you really want to go to a startup, the easiest way is to join another one and see how they do it. And then as you breathe that ether and you get a sense of it, then you move to one that you might yourself found. Again, it's a little more of an apprenticeship, I think. The PhD, though, remember, the goal is not to teach you how to start a company. It's really to give you a tool set on technology.
And with that, I'd like to thank Mohammed again. Thank you very much. We have a reception at the back of the